build a legacy for your family, and impact the kingdom of God. This is the Kingdom Podcast. Hi, guys. This is Harry Renta, and welcome to This is the Kingdom Podcast. Today, I want to share my story and why I decided to start this podcast. Let's go on a journey. And this journey began March 11th, 1979. That's my actual birthday. And that was the day that the Lord decided to bring me here onto this earth. And I was born in New York City, where I lived in one of the most roughest areas known as the Bronx. I was born in Manhattan, in the city of Manhattan, but my mother and father moved us into the Bronx, where we had an apartment building where we lived. And at a very young age of maybe around 3 to 4 years of age, I could recall a lot of noise outside of the window. And in those times, those areas where I lived in the Grand Concourse, Valentine area, there was a lot of crime. And I witnessed my very first murder. As a child, I saw this happen outside of my window. As I looked upon, I saw the man that's body was being shot up and rolled underneath a vehicle. And those images stayed in my head for quite a number of years. Crime around that area was quite frequent. I was born in the 80s and 90s, where those days there was a lot of drug activity, a lot of crime, a lot of mafia activity. And, we would hear the stories from adults and from parents. And unfortunately, we witnessed a lot of those things ourselves as young kids. I could even recall a time where one of my very close cousins, he lived in another apartment building not too far in the South Bronx area, where there was a girl that was raped and murdered. And I could recall the fear that struck us as kids. And we were afraid to even go onto the fire escape and, look outside for the fear of possibly being a victim. And this was just the way it was when we lived in these areas. It was, project building. It was, low poverty. It was just kind of just the way it was. And as I grew up, you kind of become a little bit numb to the stories. The frequent murders or just the drug activity that would happen would just be a very kind of common thing. And it's just the way we were raised. My mother and father did the best they could in raising me and my sister, which was my younger sister. And even with their love and their care and all of the attention, there's still things out there that you as a young child can still be a witness to accidentally, just like I did, witnessing this murder from I believe there was the 5th or 6th floor that we lived out of. And the window became kind of like my playground, because it's where we were able to actually see everything take place, because we weren't really allowed to go out because of the area that we lived in. And so it was something that I visit frequently, because there wasn't really a playground. I lived in what was known as the concrete jungle. And there wasn't really, unless your mother and father took you to a specific playground area to play in, literally every single day, it was just witnessing what was happening outside of that window. And I recall that I was introduced to rated R movies, gangster flicks at a very young age. These things created an image in my mind that allowed for imaginations to actually take a course, not in the most positive way, when you're watching criminals and drug enterprises being established through rated R movies. But that was my childhood. I was introduced to those things, and it planted a seed in my head, and it started to grow. Remember when I now was a young teenager, I got involved with drug activities in my school. There was friends that I just decided to hang out with that weren't most positive or influential people. And these friends were involved in the drug activities and gangs that I was actually watching on movies. And one thing led to another. I recall as a teenager, I ended up getting in trouble for driving in a stolen vehicle, and I could recall that the police officer that ended up finding out that I was in this car happened to be my head coach for my basketball team in my high school, and I ended up kind of skating away with that, but it didn't stop there. The fact that I was on the basketball team kind of I've made me feel privileged to be able to kind of get away with things such as driving in stolen cars or doing drugs at an early age. By the time I was excuse me, by the time I was 15, I got involved into drug use, and by the time I was 18, I was not only involved in drug use, but now I was actually selling the drugs that I was actually using. And so, one thing led to another. And by the time I was 18, I got arrested for the first time by DEA agents. They had tapped my mom's phone where I lived with my mother, and arrested me at a Burger King not too far away from my mom's home. And that started a pathway of just crime. I got arrested and they ended up letting me off because it was my first arrest. I just had turned 18. So I was charged as an adult. And that also gave me this kind of sense of invisibility because I was able to get away with that. And so throughout my youth, because I was an athlete in my high school, I would get away with certain things that most other students wouldn't get away with. And so it gave me a false sense of what authority really was like. It gave me a false sense of what um, really being a young adult and growing up and learning from your mistake is supposed to be like. I really didn't learn from them. I just continued making them, and I continued getting myself in more and more trouble. And so by the time I was 19, 20, I was already involved in not only street organizations, but also I was involved in the drug dealing and drug usage of what that world kind of all involves. And this is why I felt really passionate about putting this podcast together. I wanted to not only share my story and what drugs can do to a person's soul, but also how your purpose and your talent that God has given you has been established well within you. And because of wonderful people like my sister and family members that I have, I was able to fulfill or start to begin to fulfill the destiny that God had for me in my life. And that's why I wanted to share this with you here and let you know a little bit about my story. But it didn't stop at age 20. By the time I was 21, I was 22, 23. I've done so much damage to my soul by the drug usage, by the things that I was exposed to in that criminal world. When you are living that kind of a lifestyle, nothing else. And when you are in poverty, poverty is not a it's not a problem. It's a result. It's a result of wrong thinking. And so my thinking pattern, because I was influenced by a poverty mindset, was that I was to um, use whatever I can to get out of the area or the situation that I'm currently in, which is, known to many people as a hood or a project or an apartment building. That we just know that there's something more out there than just, a concrete jungle. And I thought that by selling drugs, that would allow me an opportunity to be able to live a lifestyle that I could only see in movies or dream a dream that was absolutely obtainable, but through the means that I was doing it was not going to lead me to the true destiny and purpose that God had for my life. And in fact, what it was going to do was going to ruin the destiny and purpose that God had set out for me for my life. And so by the time I was 27 or 21, I had met my wife my lovely wife. Her name is Michelle. Michelle came into my life at a very young age, and God really used her to move me away from the criminal organization and criminal lifestyle that I was living. She became a tremendous influence in my life. She had a lot of things put together more than I did at the time that we met, even though it just started off as just two people dating each other, coming from completely broken backgrounds, and but we fell in love, and God used that love to motivate her to push me away from living a lifestyle of gangs and drugs, and so we ended up moving out of the state of Florida. I thought I needed a change, but the problems still follow you. So many times you could think that by relocating from one location to another, that's going to solve your current situation. But the reality is that the situation and the problem is you, and all you're doing is taking yourself into another area, another region, and those problems still follow you because you haven't dealt with the root cause of what's really deep down inside of you. And so we ended up moving to Pennsylvania, and we lived there, her and I, for a number of years while she went to college and attended Central Penn. And as she was going through Central Penn, I was trying to find my purpose in life. I was trying to find, where am I going to do? I can't continue selling drugs and continue going in and out of jail. By the time I was 18, I was arrested for the first time. And by the time I was 30, I've already been in and out of jail probably every year or every other year. So I was ranking up a lot of court dates, a lot of financial money within lawyers and probation costs and everything that world entitles you. I mean, when they say that you're in the system, you're actually in the system. And it's very hard and difficult to get out. When you get that first arrest, it's very difficult for you to get out of that cycle of just wanting to commit either petty crimes or hardcore crimes, such as I did, or even having to pay for the attorneys. And so that kind of a weight really started to push on me. It started to just really cause me to be in a state of just confusion. I had no motivation. I was depressed. It drains you physically. It drains your spirit and soul. And so I was about 30 years of age when I ended up getting arrested again in Pennsylvania and having to move down back to Florida because now I'm being chased away from the crime that I created for myself in Pennsylvania to go back to where I started it here in Florida. And I ended up moving back with my wife. So about 2006, now fast forward a couple more years, and I'm sorry if I didn't mention this, but I was a drug addict. I was a drug addict since I was about 14 years of age. I did drugs every single day. There wasn't a day that I was not high. I don't know what it was to be not high every single day. And so as I progressed into this lifestyle that I made for myself, my wife became a tremendous instrument in me getting away from at least the criminal organizational world. And so I started to try to look for things that were more honorable to do. And so I ended up becoming an insurance agent way before 2006. 2006, I was licensed as an insurance agent, is when I actually got my license and I passed my course. But it was introduced to me when I was in Pennsylvania searching for a career path. And there was a company called Combine Life Insurance, and Combine ended up hiring me and gave me a 2-week boot camp seminar style training on how to become an insurance agent. And because of my attitude and because of the mentality that I had, I didn't take it serious. I ended up taking those 2 weeks and partying with a bunch of kids from Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and didn't take any of the information that was being provided to me at any kind of seriousness. I was just trying to just go through time and continue to live a lifestyle that I had created for myself back when I was already a young teenager. And so, the neat thing about it is that just as there was a seed that was planted when I was 12 about what this criminal organizational world can provide for you, well, when I went to Pennsylvania, there was a seed that was planted too, and it was called residual income. And I remember that I heard the instructor talk about, well, you can sell a policy, and for that policy that you sell, you can continue to get paid for it and not have to sell it again. And I just thought that was interesting, that I can actually make a sale and not have to continue to work and still get paid. I like that idea. It stayed with me. And so when we moved from Pennsylvania back to Florida, I decided to see how I could find a job and or a career path. My wife ended up going to school. She had a college degree. She graduated magna cum laude and was on a road to what many will view as success. And so I wanted that for myself, and I just didn't know how. I never graduated high school. I know that many think that I have, but I really didn't. I got a completion certificate for being there for 4 years, which is equivalent to a diploma, but it's not actually a diploma. And so I didn't have that accomplishment under my belt. I just had 4 years of completing a high school education. And so here my wife has high school diploma alongside with a college degree. And I said to myself, well, how can I, compete with something like that if I'm trying to find a career path for myself with no education? And, the system has a way of making you think a certain way. But what was funny about it is that I decided I'm just going to use my talents that God has given me and the gift and the ability to communicate with others. And so I thought of the idea after watching a VH1 clip on Ice-T. I found it very intriguing that Ice-T got on this VH1 documentary about his life, and he said that he didn't know how to rap. And I said, well, how could he not know how to rap? He's a rapper, and that's what he's known for. But he said he didn't know how to rap, but he knew how to hustle. And I said, okay, hold on. I hear him because I felt the same way. I can hustle. So how did he do this? Well, he said he hustled himself a record deal with the executives, and then he learned how to actually put a rap song together, but after he actually got the deal. So I said to myself, well, this is interesting. I know that I have some abilities as a hustler myself. I can make some different kind of sales here that doesn't have to necessarily be drug related. So I said to my wife, I said, well, honey, you went to school for human resource. Could you give me a fake resume? And so I asked her to give me a fake resume, make a fake resume, and she did. She made a fake resume. This was already 2006. My son was born. My oldest son, Jeremiah, was born. And I said to myself, well, I don't want him to live or see his father be a person that doesn't have any success, or I didn't want to introduce him to a world of crime. I wanted him to be proud of his father. And so I decided to come up with a fake resume and see if I could find myself a career job just like my wife. And so she ends up giving me this fake resume, and I went to go apply for jobs. And I recall the very first person that had called, it was either the first or second, I can't recall, but the individual called me and said that I was overqualified. And I said to myself, this is ridiculous. What do you mean I'm overqualified? I've never even heard of such a thing before, but this is what happens when you step into corporate America. And so I ended up getting a secondary phone call, and the gentleman said to me, well, there's a new position that has become available, and I think that you could be a good candidate for this job. And so the position was a financial assistant to a water treatment company. I don't want to mention names here, but because of the story, but this water treatment company hired me on as a financial manager, an assistant financial manager. And so that was my title. And I thought that was interesting because I have no education in financing. I've never been to school for financing, but I was able to, in my interview process, sell him my resume and I ended up coming up. He ended up giving me a job, making over 100,000 a year. So I was bringing $10,000 in every single month, and it was amazing because I've never made money legally like this, and so we didn't know anything about how to manage our finances. And so I recall my wife getting very excited about the fact. Well, at first she didn't get really excited. At first she thought that, how can this be? Here I am. I've gone to school. I have a college degree, and you're making 3 times as much as I am, and you haven't gone to school. And so it was a tremendous learning experience. I was able to use the gifts and talents that I naturally have in order for me to make something work for a corporation that didn't value the fact that of my talents and my gifts. Because if we fast forward literally to 11 months prior to that start date when I got hired, I recall getting a phone call that I needed to come into an office of the manager, and he had a letter for me, and the letter was letting me know that my position was going to be dissolved. And I could recall the feeling that I had was just, I thought my whole world was just ending. I just felt like something had died. And this dream of becoming financially stable was just gone. And it just, it hurt my heart. It really, I didn't, I felt into a stage of depression. I felt that my manhood was being taken and stripped away from me. I just thought that I would never be able to get another opportunity to make any kind of income like the one I was going to. And I recall sitting there by myself and just saying, I don't have a college degree. I don't have a college education. How am I going to be able to make this kind of income again? And this is 2006. So around 2006, 2007. So 10,000, 100,000 plus a year was a lot of money back then. And I just was shot. My bubble was burst. My the energy and the charisma that I had became just very depressing. And I remember that emotion started to turn into anger. And I couldn't believe that they were doing this to me. They let me go. It was one day. One more day I would have been there. I would have had severance pay, and the severance pay was gone. There was nothing. I didn't know. A lot of thoughts just started to run through my mind, and one of the ones that actually started to run through my mind is that I will never work for anybody ever again. And what I realized now, when I look back, hindsight, is what I actually ended up doing is I took a vow to have nobody hurt me the way that I was hurt before. And that's what I was really crying out. And anytime you take a vow such like that, you become enslaved to that. And I was starting a new career path, but from the wrong foot. And I remember that I was, after several weeks of being in this depression, I could recall starting a search to look for another job. And that's when that conversation that teacher had with me back in Pennsylvania about insurance started to really replay in my mind. And I came across a company called United American. United American was hiring agents, and they were giving you a career opportunity, and that was their recruiting pitch that they had for us. And I recall that I ended up getting with a agency here in the Lake Mary area that had hired me and took me onto a similar boot camp style, but not quite the same as Combined Insurance. But United American did have a teacher that actually taught. Nowadays we don't have teachers teaching much anymore. Everything is done online. And so this teacher had an actual physical class that I could attend and prepare to take a course so that I can get licensed and get a 215 license as an insurance agent. So my study habits were terrible. I never paid attention in class, going from elementary school all the way to high school. I didn't have any study habits for test taking. I wasn't one of those that knew how to take tests or was good at taking tests. So I struggled. And I remember that the teacher had told us, well, you can come back as many times as you want to and feel ready to before you can actually pass the exam. So I recall passing the course, which is needed by the state to have your certification so that you can go ahead and take your license, your state exam. And so the state exam, when I was ready for that, what I ended up doing, because I just did not feel qualified, I did not feel like I was able to take this test, I ended up going back to that teacher for about a whole year. I attended the class. Now, this class took me about 2 months to be certified and graduate. 60 hours is what they used for back in 2006, 2007. I ended up passing my course in 2007, and it wasn't into 2008 that I ended up actually taking the test. Now, it passed almost a whole year before I signed up and had just the courage to do so and become licensed. And I recall just studying for this thing. It was the only thing I felt that I ever studied for. I didn't even study for my SAT exams in high school. I didn't study for any major exam or test in school. But this here, I needed to study for because I wanted to really become something. I wanted to be proud of something. And I remember that I told my wife that I was going to take this on March 11th, 2008. And that's my birthday. And I told myself, I'm going to have a good birthday or I'm going to have a terrible birthday. And I remember I went that morning to take that exam, and they give you the results once you're done. And I took the exam. I felt pretty good about the exam, but I didn't know if I actually passed or not. And so when I sit there and wait, the lady hands me over the piece of paper and it says a 70%. Now, what you guys might not know, but for some of you that have been in the industry know, a 70% is all you need in order for you to actually pass the exam. So I got exactly what you needed to pass the exam, which was a 70%. And I lost it. I ended up crying, the tears of joy that birthday. That was it. And I thought to myself, and I said to myself, this is it. I'm on the road path to becoming wealthy, and I thought that this was going to be my ticket. And it was interesting because I did not know the journey that I was into, but that was the beginning of my journey as an insurance agent. And in 2008, March 11th, on that birthday, I was licensed as an insurance agent. And even though that was the beginning of a tremendous journey that I'm still currently on right now, I knew that I quickly found out that this was going to be a tough road. It wasn't going to be easy. I ended up getting plugged in with United American. I started to learn how this industry really works. And I found myself that there was a lot of personal challenges that I was going to have to face alongside the corporate challenges in meeting a career as an insurance agent. And I recall just all of the things that has led me to today, to where I'm at here today, and what I've learned, and the passion behind becoming an agent to an agency. And that's why I decided to do this podcast. I wanted to not only influence those that have currently joined me on this journey, but those that haven't yet begun their career as an insurance agent. And because I learned how to become a insurance agent and then become an insurance agency, there's a tremendous passion that I have to see young agents really look at this industry and know that this could be a life changer for you. You know, today, my wife and I live a very comfortable lifestyle. It wasn't like that when I first started. And I love to share some more of this here on my next episode. So what I'm going to let you guys know is that there's going to be some more exciting news that I'm going to share with you in regards to my journey in this journey that I have taken as an insurance agent to agency. And one of the passions that I have is to help build owners, not employees. I believe that everybody can be an entrepreneur. I believe that everyone that has yet to discover their leadership role has a tremendous opportunity to be able to make a living, not only for themselves, but leave a legacy behind for their families. And that's what it's really about. Because when I got into this industry, I got into this industry because I had a son by the name of Jeremiah. He was born in 2006. And I did not know what I wanted to do. I did not know how I was going to be able to provide as the head of the household, how I was going to be able to provide for my family. And this is why there's been this deep passion in me to bring other agents, other entrepreneurs to that same level of leadership. And it's a journey, and I want to invite you to this journey. I hope that my story empowers you to believe that there is much more out there, that you can truly discover your purpose and know what your leadership role is in this career path. And so I ask you to subscribe to my podcast and follow me on IG and Facebook at Harry Renta. And I am looking forward to this journey alongside each and every single one of you guys that will be following me here, and get an opportunity to know you and share with you some of the successes that I've had within the last 5 years and how we were able to build an agency such as Kingdom Benefit Group. Kingdom Benefit Group was an agency that we started in 2015. And we have grown that agency to have several other general agencies underneath us, which are learning themselves too how to become an agency and an agent and an agency owner. And so I'm excited about this podcast. I'm excited about the direction that we are heading. And I'm thankful for those that will be joining us on this journey. So if you're interested in learning more, visit kingdombenefitgroup.com. Click on the top button on the right to become an agent, and you could find more information on how Kingdom Benefit Group can help you become an agent and agency owner.